Thanks for having us first and foremost. My name is Markus. I'm leading venture capital investments for Holcim Maqer Ventures. Holcim Maqer Ventures is the strategic CVC of Holcim Group. For those of you who don't know, one of the largest building materials producers, mainly concrete and cement. As a strategic, we see investing into everything that is strategically relevant for Holcim. That being said, materials, obviously a super relevant topic for us, but also for you. So Max, why don't you tell us a little bit more about Henkel Ventures and why materials are so relevant for your industry right now?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Henkel Ventures, we're also a strategic VC fund, and we basically work on, as a company, applied chemistry. Yeah? So we are close to the customers and consumer, and really try to understand their challenges and pain points, and then translate chemical solutions to solve those. And we, as a CVC, we are investing there and scouting there for relevant technologies in those kind of fields. So one exciting example would be thermal interface materials. Yeah, this is something where a lot of people probably don't have the understanding, but basically how to transfer the heat from the chip to the heat sink. And one exciting material there is diamonds. I'm not sure if you know, but diamonds actually have the best thermal properties a natural material can have. So that's one area which is quite exciting to us, and where we are looking to how can we formulate this, which is the big challenge, and also drive the costs down. So if you have any diamond startups reducing costs, or which can be formulated, let us know. That's one good example. How about you?
Well, there's a lot of materials that are relevant. Mostly what goes into then cement or concrete to basically reduce the CO2 footprint. And one big, let's say, stream of materials that we used to tap into was slags as a waste product from steel production. But as steel makers now have to change their production processes and increasingly use electrification, these kind of slags are not longer usable because they have very high heavy metal contents that we can't use. So we're heavily looking into the space of whichever company will be first to figure out how to use those EAF slags and make them usable for us. Will be a big stream of, let's say, supplementary cementitious materials that we can use to offset CO2 emissions.
Mm-hmm. Okay, actually, it sounds interesting. But like the slag, is it like the waste material coming out?
Exactly. Okay. It's just like it's like in fly ash slag, which basically comes as a byproduct, a waste product in steel production. And historically, it used to be if it's blast furnaces, then we could just directly use it, ship it in bulk, and input it pretty much one-to-one into cement and concrete as a substitute for cement. But nowadays, as I said, it's with the heavy metal content, you're no longer allowed to do it. So you need to have a treatment technology which is efficient and thus make it, again, possible for us to use it. Good. I mean, Henkel is a very broad company, right? There's a lot of different products and areas you're looking into, but what are, let's say, the key frontiers areas that you're currently looking into?
So one area we are very excited about is like a next generation chemical R&D enabling like the materials of tomorrow. So what we see there in the last years with AI, a lot is happening and a lot is moving into the segment where people said, okay, how can we utilize the current AI talent and the momentum for materials? So there's a lot of more talent, a lot of new technologies are developed, like models, open models, private models are being developed, for example, for molecular computations and also other areas, because it's quite a complex field. If you compare it to like text-based system LLMs, those are quite easy compared to that. They're super complicated, but in chemistry, material science, you need to account for much more broader scope of challenges. And there we are excited about technologies which really focus on the application side of things, because for pharma, it makes sense if you develop one molecule, but for us, and happy to hear your view on it, it's you really need to understand the end application and how can you formulate it in the product at the customer. And this does not end in the lab. You really need to have a end-to-end process to really understand where are the challenges coming at the end. One good example for us is so we also, next to the industrial business, a consumer company where we have detergents, and basically really understanding in the washing machine what are really the products in combination doing together with the laundry. Just swapping one ingredient often leads to vastly different results in the washing machine itself. So that is something really where we look at companies and technologies which can really cover that end to end.
If you think about this end-to-end process, then what role or what problem is scalability. I mean, obviously you sell products also in very high quantities, and for a small startup that's developing materials, I assume that it's quite challenging to reach the scale that you need, right?
Definitely. I mean, there are some niche applications for maybe electronics where scale is important, but not as important. But come back to the washing machine example, yeah, detergents are sold at such high volumes that you really need also to consider where can this be manufactured at the relevant scales, which is sometimes 100,000 tons, which is a different kind of challenge. How about a new industry?
Yeah, you need to involve step changes because if you can go from a 100 kilo plant to a 1 million ton plant, right? You need to have the process engineering and you need to make sure that there's no major flaws in your engineering design. So getting something from that scale to industrial scale is super hard. Also for price, because I'm quite sure for you, also price is relevant when it comes to purchasing those new materials, right?
Yes, yeah, that always needs to work in existing structures. I mean, if you have new applications, premium or high-end applications, that might be a different story, but for most of the existing ones, yeah. Do you somewhere support that as startups with your approach and go to market, or like really getting to the scales because you have all the infrastructure, right? So that could be.
I think, yes, this is one of our major value adds as a strategic investor with regards to scaling up. That a huge topic, for example, is colocation, especially when a startup is producing a material which goes into cement and eventually uses flue gas from a cement plant, for example, as a feedstock. I think what can always kill a business case is transporting material. So the logistics costs in our industry are a major driver of a business case. So whenever you can produce something and use it on site, this obviously is super valuable, and hence in that space, I think we're a heavy supporter. On another hand, also on the R&D side, we do have a very large R&D center where we obviously also do a lot of research on those kind of materials in-house, and then can share that knowledge with the startups that we have invested in, and just making business cases fly. I think one thing that we have been trying to implement is those early offtake amounts or volumes for startups are usually very, very expensive. And initially our strategy was to try to convince country organizations to use it, but then we figured out nobody wanted to pay for it. So now we treat it sort of as another type of CVC investment, where we say we invest as a group into this offtake agreement and then give it to the countries for free to make them more interested in using it. But what about you? What are you doing apart from just giving the money?
Yeah, I mean, to the startups, really working very close at the customers. We try to open the doors to the industry, really, that they can talk to the experts, because often what we've seen is that startups, they have certain ideas and very innovative ideas, and if we pair that with customers of ours, which might be potential customers for the partners, or really the super deep experts in our organization who understand the industries very well, there was a very interesting exchanges, like the one side learning what could be possible with technology, the other side learning really what is the industry looking for and what are the challenges and the pain points which were there in the past. So that's always one of the things where we offer the startups access to our network of our customer base, basically, but then also the internal experts. So far, that has been quite often a very relevant door opener into getting into the relevant companies for us.
Maybe a follow-up question on, let's say, the commercial support. How are you treating this whole relation between, okay, now I'm a strategic investor, so I want to have beneficial treatment or preferential treatment and exclusivity potentially even, and don't limit the scalability of the startup that you invest in? What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I mean, there are two perspectives. If you ask our R&D, they probably have a quite clear opinion. Yeah, we want exclusivity. We as a VC investor, for sure, we don't want a company to just be working with us. We want them to work with P&G, Unilever, and the likes, because that just makes sense, because that is progressing the technology further for everyone in the ecosystem, and especially if you have like sustainable goals, that is much better. I think you need to find balance and then work maybe on certain applications where it's really strategically essential for your business to maybe have some exclusivity. But generally, we are more like, hey, you should work with the company, but if they work with your competitor, you need to work with them better. So you have their preferential treatment without like this legal kind of binding. How do you see that? Do you have any examples where you've done that?
We do sometimes. I mean, we do sometimes have exclusivity agreements, but mostly they're then bound by geography and time, because obviously you don't. I mean, the good thing is with the materials, usually, as I said, the output quantities that startups are able to produce at early stages are usually quite small, that we can offtake pretty much 100% of their material. as they scale, obviously you really don't want to enforce any kind of exclusivity, because if we don't offtake the material, then it will just sit around and nobody will buy it. So in that sense, I think we do want to have some sort of compensation for especially early stage support, in the sense of mostly then it's more like discounts rather than exclusivity. But in the long term, obviously exclusivity is not a big deal. But as we already talked about exclusivity, I think one thing that we always get asked about is exit scenarios, right? Acquisitions, or how do you see, if you invest early stage into a startup that is very strategically relevant for Henkel, the potential of it being acquired by maybe a competitor, or how do you deal with this topic?
Yeah, I would say, and we've made the learnings there, it's not on first rational to invest in a company and then acquire it. I mean, in a broad portfolio that might happen in some cases, and I think that is also natural for a CVC. But if you go in with the rationale to acquire the company, you're directly with a certain bias and a different kind of rationale than if you just go in as a CVC investor or like a VC investor who has a different kind of idea, making the company grow as much as possible. And if along the way the competitor is faster than we are, then that's how it is. Then hopefully we still have this beneficial position, building the relationship with the company and being very close to them, that we can still work with them, or might also have a certain chance to acquire it if it's like not a super fast process. But yeah, this you can never rule out. And so far we've already made good experience with like treating it that way. Otherwise, there might be also other investors in the cap table who just think of you as the potential acquirer, which also doesn't help you in the long run. Did you have such cases?
I think for us it's quite similar. The time horizons for potential acquisitions for especially material startups are quite long. So we're talking about 5 to 10 or 10 to 15 years, by which is probably interesting enough for us to acquire. Same as you, I think we try to treat these two topics completely differently. As a venture investor, obviously you want to make deals, as you said, to maximize the value of the company in the long run. And this is somewhat contradicting then your M&A theory, because you would then want to purchase that company at the cheapest possible price, right? So no, I mean, we're not really investing with the goal of acquiring. I think we have an M&A department that does those kind of deals, but it's not usually startups. It's more mature companies. So pretty similar to you. I mean, we have 30 seconds left, so do you want to close on a visionary statement for the rest of the room of your maybe hot take on how the space is going to develop?
Yeah, I mean, something which we've talked about with several startups is this, and which is quite an exciting vision, is like if you think about next generation chemical R&D, because it's so physical in the real world, you need a lot of data. So what we can really see in like 2030, that you really have like those not dark factories, but dark labs where really experiments are being run, sure targeted, but to generate all of this kind of data. Feeding into the models, which we imagine in the 2030, 2040 vision to be a key backbone of our innovation engine. You still need like the chemical innovators with intuition, gut feeling, and core understanding. But basically, it's supported by this and solving like the data gap, which is still real for solving the key challenge of really having like a scientific superintelligence, if you want to say so. Yeah. How about you? How's it for your industry?
Yeah, maybe hot take. I think in our industry probably it will not necessarily be a new material that will change the market, but a new process to produce the same material. So let's say the same materials that we're used to deal with, because they have very high acceptance with customers. But if you just find a new way to produce it with significantly lower emissions, I think this will probably be.
Do you have something tangible which you can say?
I mean, electrification and carbon capture mostly. Yeah. This obviously then you have to make the business case work, but mostly electrification, carbon capture, yeah.
Well, okay, yeah. I mean, that would be for the climate quite a win.
Good. Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you.